Dali, thank you so much for jumping on today.
Thank you for having me, Phil.
So I'll let Vitaly do his own introduction. But before that, quick word about the show and about me. I'm a partner at Webisoft. We build custom software, a company established in Montreal, Canada. Started this podcast series because we like to talk to interesting people in industries that we serve and are interested in. Today, my guest, Vitaly, do you want to take a couple minutes to explain who you are, what you do?
Yep, sure. Thank you, Phil. Hi, everyone. My name is Vitaly. I'm a founder and director of innovation at Nanoborn. And at Nanoborn, we do applied nanotechnology for petroleum and geosystem industries. And the core market segment we serve is oil and gas exploration and production.
So nanotechnology in oil and gas.
That is right.
How does that work?
Awesome. I would say we're really, kicking in, and the time is right because there is resources globally deteriorated very much,
Mm-hmm.
and that maturity of the resources and the fields brings necessity for trying new technology, the technology that expands the capability of the technology itself. Because people in oil and gas, it is not a secret, they are very conservative people.
You could say that again.
To get a penny out of pocket of oil company, it's like, wow, it's a big deal. You need to spend like 3 to 5 years to do that if you're targeting to the tech. So yeah, I would say it is a good time, it is the right place where we are, and I believe time is right.
So how do you? So you basically your technology is mostly used through exploration. You said,
Right. In the drilling part.
right? So how does that like? What's a game changer that you bring to the market compared to, let's say, the traditional way of doing exploration?
I would highlight one advantage that many people you know underestimate. It's a simplicity. Simplicity brings so much advantages to the processes that in oil and gas exploration have in place as a multitude of the short processes connected into one system. So if something complicated within that system and it fails, it fails the whole system. So what we bring simplicity because it is very simple to use our technology during the larger process as a basically put in. You just kind of integrate it easily, and it goes smoothly. And if we talk more about technological part of it, it's a higher capability of withstanding a variety of the mechanical degradation aspects, the thermal degradation aspects. So basically, kind of we can expand what drilling mod can do.
And can you tell me more about the current state of the company? Like, where are you? Do you have clients? Are you in the field? What's the
Yep,
current state, and what do you see as big objectives for the next 12 months?
right. That's a good question. So our major focus now is expansion in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
However, our background is coming from Russia, and then we transitioned to the Middle East and Southeast Asia around the same time. And we got an opportunity to go offshore first time in Vietnam. And that was very exciting for us. And from there, we could expand. So then we transitioned to Middle East, and we also been working with the offshore assets.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of complemented what we did back in Russia. And so with the time we exited basically Russia, and I relocated to United States. And so now it makes sense, to focus on the United States accounts, and that's what we're doing. So
What do you think is the biggest difference between those markets? Let's say between Russia and the United States for oil and gas.
yeah, I would say structurization, because not only in Russia, you can see in Europe. Western Europe part and in Southeast Asia and throughout Middle East, you can see consolidation of the oil resources under like few basically companies,
Hmm.
sometimes even under one company. Like in Malaysia, for example, there is just Petronas, that's it. And so that is a big difference because approach to the market changes. One thing to work with the national oil company, and there are just like, let's say, one or three of them. Another thing, in Texas only, there are about 30 companies who produces more than 10 million barrel a year. There are another 100 companies that produces more than 1 million barrel. And there are thousands of companies who produces less than that. Thousands. So you can imagine that like it totally different environment.
Yeah, landscape is totally different. So more variety, essentially. So it's more competitive market.
Yeah, agree to that. Yeah,
As your current title of director of innovation, what's your day to day like?
it's great. I love it. I love my lifestyle. I love what I do. Many people say it is important to love what you do.
Hmm.
You can really enjoy your life. That's, I believe, very true. In my experience, you you have to love what you do. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense because we have only one life. If you do something that brings you pain, like why would you do that, right?
Why do it? Yeah.
Right. So my day, normally I wake up early. So when I woke up, I go to the gym normally. I will spend there about 1.5 hour and then having my breakfast and after that going to my home office right here. Yeah, and starting to get to it basically. And yeah, with the breaks for the lunch and the dinner sometime. Yeah, I can spend here like most of my day.
So fully remote. I guess you're a distributed team.
Right. Yeah. I think after COVID, we didn't really feel necessity to gather all people in one place. It really changed, even attitude towards your job, kind of like how you work. And I was also blessed with the good people around me, and they are pretty much independent. You know, uh, I've been through operations like when we just started. I hated it. So currently, I'm not trying to get into it.
Good, good. I mean, you identify what you don't like to do, and yeah. And is your entire team remote?
So I would say yes, because people spread, not even throughout the one continent.
Okay, you got people on a global scale.
Right, right. Because also it's important considering the time zone. For example, our customers in Southeast Asia, they live about 11 hours ahead of us.
Yeah.
And yeah, so basically their business hours when it's night in Austin. And so it makes sense for us kind of, working shifts.
Okay.
And it's, yeah, and basically that, how would I call it, like we basically work in shifts. Like my shift is now and I handling, questions arising from the past basically in the time zone wise.
Right. So a little bit of async work. Um, how big is the operation at the moment?
Uh, so worldwide, I can say that it is pretty much a mid-size business.
Okay.
But if we talk about the United States and North America, we can say it is a startup. We kind of, pretty much starting up. We had to build everything what is needed for our business to operate
Mhm.
from scratch. We didn't have any support here with the prior contacts. So when I came here, I relied a lot on basically myself to to break through the thick walls of the network. Yeah, I would say University of Texas at Austin helped me a lot with that, and the nonprofit organizations like TechSea.
Mhm.
They helped me a lot with getting the right people in front of the right people.
Right, because I assume it's not the easiest industry to get into when you're a newcomer in the country, right?
Yeah, this is so funny. There are so little people. It's really funny. You might think like, hey, oil and gas is a global industry. I mean,
There's like
like,
5 people.
for- but
The
yeah,
same 5,
wh-
yeah.
when you like participate in a I participate in a lot of events in relation to tech in oil and gas, and oftentimes speak, etc. And so you can realize in about 3 years that it's like same 30 people. It's same 30 people who you're basically interacting with. And
Yeah,
you know when you make business cards, it makes no sense anymore to
makes no
bring them.
sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have a bit of expertise in blockchain at the firm, and when we go to blockchain events, it's exactly like that. It's a bit of a like family, you know.
Right.
It's like every year you see the same people, or at least yeah, like you see who endures, the cycles, right? For crypto and
Right.
blockchain. That it obviously has its up and down, a little bit like the price of oil, I guess. What's your biggest? I guess what are you most looking forward to uh, in the next year or so? Like, are you working on something big? That you're really looking to get out and ship to market.
Yeah, I would say like what we do every day is to really change the situation in the global scale in our industry. Um, I love my industry. I love petroleum engineering. I'm a petroleum engineer by the background. I did all sets of studies and the PhD in petroleum engineering, and I really appreciate that science. And it has so much in it. You can do it for multiple lifetimes and still know nothing. That is exciting. You can really dig into like very little aspect of let's say the retention of the fluid in the pore scale, and there will be multiple lifetimes that needed to figure it out. I think major kind of aspect what we try to change is the approach to the field development. If you change the approach to how you develop your asset,
Mhm.
you can make it much more efficient. But to change the approach requires heavyweight, decisions,
Yeah,
and it's not all the time case, especially in oil and gas, which is pretty conservative, and
yeah,
it's hard to turn. It's hard to turn if they set rails on a certain product. It is really hard to get rid of this product. Even if, the champion of this product changed his mind and understood that, okay, it doesn't really work like we thought it will, he can do nothing because the contracts in our industry signed for 5 years,
yeah,
you know, and like if you sign the contract for 5 years, what do? You keep using the same thing that you kind of, signed for.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a big boat that can't really turn around quickly, if at
Right.
all. Uh,
Exactly. Yes.
yeah. I've experienced this as well as a vendor in the space from a tech perspective. Um, yeah, decisions. I mean, there's two speeds that I keep hearing about. There, like in terms of decision making, it's either um, you know 2 years for a decision or yesterday. It's either they need it right, like drop everything you're doing. It's now, or yeah, we'll see. There's no in between.
Also in it, like if we dig a little bit into why in the capital intensive industries like oil and gas exploration production, it is almost impossible to turn the wheels, because people also don't like changes. That's a attitude question. People in reality don't like changes
Hmm.
because change requires action. Action requires risk. people don't like take risks. You wouldn't like to take risk if you make, a bunch of money. And generally, everything is like train. You just sit on a train and it goes its way. So majority, I would say like 99% of the people in our industry, they don't like changes.
Well, I think, um, that's true to an extent, right? Like, as an entrepreneur, obviously, if you don't like risk, you're probably not in the right line of business. But in oil and gas specifically, what I keep hearing as well, and it's fun to hear everybody's perspective, and from different companies and different angles to the problem. But um, depending on the level of leadership, there's some elements that's going to be kind of the main criteria for a decision. And I think at the very upper level, risk is number one, right? If if there's any level of risk, um, then that slows things down to a crawl. And you're right, like I think for to change your mind or to to make a change, like in the risk reward has to be, like completely unbalanced. If they're gonna make $1 million more in profit, they're not interested. It needs to be a giant swing or nothing. Um, and the if it's not broken, don't fix it is very much true. But yeah, it's I get it. I also get it. Um, as director of innovation, um, what are you most excited about from an innovation standpoint in oil and gas? It could be tech, it could be something else, but like, what do you see coming up as a new available piece of technology, let's say either this year or next, or that you're super excited about that you think is going to be a game changer?
So I believe one of the key changes that are coming up in our industry are the flow control solutions, and not mechanical ones. The ones that can divert the flow in the far field area. Basically, in a simple words, if you get farther from the wellbore, how do you control the flow there?
Mm-hmm.
To kind of have simple understanding of what's going on in the field when the oil and gas is produced. It's all about the flow. You want to control the flow. As a petroleum engineer, as a reservoir engineer, and as an asset manager, everything depends on where the oil flowing or the gas. And it may be not a secret that actually the gas that is subsurface, it is mostly in a liquefied form. So there is very little free gas. And so you always talk about liquids flowing one direction or the other. I think because of maturity of the resource, because of the deterioration of the resources, it is now became crucial for the oil companies to get to the areas they never visited yet with their flow. The flow tends to go to the less friction area,
Yep.
the area where physics kind of allow it to flow easily. So, and you can imagine that if you pump from one side or you produce from one side, you will basically follow the same channels all the time.
Yep.
And what engineer want to change? He wants to get to the other areas because other areas might have billions in the resources.
So how, like, what's being done to facilitate that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because I just recently been conducting analysis on the polymer story, how the polymer solutions were utilized in our industry. And so in a very short kind of brief overview, we can say that the polymer applications to control the flow of the fluid subsurface took about 30 years to get some decent result. So you can imagine that people were experimenting and trying it in all variety of ways and basically developing it throughout this for 30 years to get to the point where we could implement it in only one type of reservoir, which is called sandstone. And so we figured, okay, at least in sandstone we can use it now. And so we can say that from like 2000s, polymer application really started to take place as a major tool to control the flow. So, and unfortunately, as of 2026, there is not much progress in the polymer science, to really change the situation and expand into the shale applications, into the carbonate applications, and even withstand the mechanical degradation aspect. Because, everything we do, we pump, we basically, it always require mechanical stability, very high one. And because of the polymer is a chain molecule, any mechanical significant, force destroy it.
Hmm.
And so that doesn't allow to use polymer everywhere. And like there are multiple issues also in relation to polymer. So we need to change something with that. Like we need to have portfolio of the flow control solutions that are not consist of only polymer. And that's what industry started to do. I would say about 10 years ago, first publications about the use of the nanotechnology for improvement of the polymer basically initially started to pop up. So you can say that from 1960s to 2015, polymer was first developing and then being main thing. And since 2015, people start to realize that we need something else, or we need to improve it so much that it will be like different thing. So nanotech significantly improved the polymer opportunity, but it didn't yet get to the field in a full scale, because I kind of, it goes back to the, big ship that is very hard to turn,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, so even if everyone realizes that, okay, this is bad, we need to do something, they can do nothing basically, in the and they just keep doing that. And that's going back to attitude, like I don't like changes, I don't like take risk. And so there we in 2016 we started promotion of the nano emulsion, basically what I do on a day-to-day basis, and is a nanotechnology for the flow control. So I try to use nanotech to develop the solution that will be different from anything existing now. And you can get rid of majority of the disadvantages of the polymer, such as high retention rate, mechanical degradation, complexity to make it, and others, multiple. So, and our nano emulsion, sometimes we call it emulsion system with nanoparticle.
Hmm.
Basically, that's what we use now and what we offer to the market now. So we spent about, I would say, 5 years in a deep R&D. I personally spent 3 years in the lab, just doing lab tests. I did like I'm joking. We have a club. It's called a 1,000 sample club. Like when you mix the 1,000 samples, you can
Yeah.
get into that club. To mix 1,000 samples in the lab, you will need to spend years in the lab.
Yeah.
So I did that.
Did you sleep in the
And
lab or did you get to go home?
yes, yeah, it kind of like I would say in our in the modern age, labs can be pretty comfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, and
And
then
like you said, if you like what you do, right?
right. I mean, if you're enjoying that, and scientists, like what scientists do, they are truth seekers.
Yeah.
Scientists seek truth. Why like scientists, oftentimes so persuasive and so stubborn, with something? It's because they are not satisfied with something they didn't yet understood, and they can say that, yes, it is truth. and it's kind of endless process basically. So after spending this time in the lab, we transitioned to the field, and we spent another 3 years in testing in a field. And only after that, 6 years of basically R&D, we could get to the market for real.
So I assume for those 6 years, like you needed some sort of funding. Was that primarily grants, or did you go through the VC investor route?
Yes, very actually important and crucial aspect is a funding. Right. Without funding, I wouldn't do anything basically. Not majority, 50% came from abroad investment,
Yeah.
from the country that was pretty much at the time in a high economic success, and they just were looking for where to invest
Mhm.
because they needed money out of country, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So we could get into that flow, and we got funded 50% from abroad, 50% internal. And it was not a VC. For me, in my entrepreneurial journey, I never used VC money.
Why?
And in the beginning, yeah, that's interesting. In the beginning, I couldn't get it. I wanted, but I couldn't get it. We didn't approve.
Now you
And
could get it, but you
like,
don't want it, right?
right. And when you kind of had to
Yeah.
go through all of it on your own, you realize that, wow, actually, this is good that I never had him.
Yeah.
I have friends who unfortunately, had very poor experience with the VCs.
Yeah.
They are founders, they are right scientists, and they ended up being pushed out of the company by the VC.
That might happen, right? That's the problem. The main problem is kind of losing control of your own company. So that's a tricky line, right? For sure. Like obviously, if you're able to kind of bootstrap or or get different type of funding or grants, like that's probably a preferred route. Or you find a VC where that kind of shares your values, right? And is more of a net positive on company management rather than just a check, right? Because that's when it's just about money. Obviously, if they don't like where it's headed, they're going to change direction, and then they make decisions for you.
Phil, I believe in a VC world, it is never about the people, unfortunately. It is all about the money.
It can be, but yeah, obviously there's horror stories out there, including the one that from your friend. I've heard the same on my end, right? It happens, but some very successful as well, right? And it's a good, some good relationships. So I think it's almost getting married a little bit. Like you gotta have to pick the right person.
And look at the divorce rate.
Exactly, but that's exactly right. Uh, and most companies fail as well, right? For multiple reasons, and sometimes it's just not a good. Like the partners don't get along. Final questions for you today, Vitaly. Um, What's your relationship with either machine learning or AI at the company?
Very close. I have very close relationship with the machine learning and the neural network. We incorporated in existing simulator, which we use to design the treatment and to model the flows, which we were talking about in the beginning. It is very fascinating. It really saves us a lot of time to use it. We actually could improve our labor cost at the higher efficiency, productivity with the use of the machine learning and neural networks.
How would you improve it? How would that work?
Yeah. So basically, our type of business, our simulation, our model requires a lot of coding and continuous improvement.
Hmm.
We kind of, if we split the process that we go through when we do modeling, it's a multiple processes which are interrelated, and basically at the back end we always need coders and different coders with the different profiles,
Mm.
and one of them will take care of the physics, another will take care of the hydrodynamics, third will take care about the mathematics, and fourth will take care about the chemistry, la la la. So you can imagine that like our paycheck for the coders is like significant. But with the use of the AI solutions, we could significantly improve that. So we don't need that much people anymore because it can code itself. If
Right.
just put the right person on the control panel, you don't need that much people anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's important aspect that we use.
Yeah. And you use like a public model like a Claude for that, or do you have a preference?
I would say we always combine several platforms for different purposes,
Mhm.
because one platform can be good, let's say coding for the physics, and other can do nothing about it. So that's
Yeah,
why we
one's
kind of
better at this and that, and yeah.
right, 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 right. And
Mm.
neural network wise, in our industry, because we are always talking about the media that is unfamiliar. So in our industry, every millimeter of the rock is different from the prior one. So
Yeah.
it's always unique.
Mhm.
And that's where neural network can help a lot.
Yeah.
Neural network, what it does for us, it basically learning from our past experience and trying to give us some model of what this can be now, like at this depth, you
Yeah.
know? And that really helps. That requires a lot of power, of course, to like conduct all of those estimations and come up with the model. But this is what we're, working very closely with.
Very cool. So pattern recognition, I assume, like computer vision, stuff like that.
Um, I mean, I wouldn't say that we put a lot towards that. Pattern recognition from what sense you mean? Sorry.
So you talked about like rocks being, all different and unique, but obviously, like, kind of needs to learn. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right, right, right. I misheard you. You said pattern. Yeah,
Yes.
I've heard patent. Like what?
Oh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see.
Sorry about that. Yes,
No.
pattern recognition.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is
yeah.
what you're right. Basically, we call them channels. So like all of them for us are the flow channels. So
Yeah.
yes, like to recognize what channel and what is characteristics.
Yeah. Do you think you could fully automate your business at one point?
Actually, that is pretty much possible, I think. We kind of going there. We
Mm-hmm.
trying to use less people for the tasks that do not require creativity.
Yeah.
So if there is no creativity required, we would pretty much use machine learning for all of it. And if there is a creativity required, there will be one person who is broadly aware about what he's doing, and
Yeah.
he will use basically the same things, to do that. So
We'll supervise.
yes, yes, and yeah, I would say we pretty much getting there.
So, I mean, even for us as developers, right? Like the landscape changes from week to week as to what we can do and what part we can kind of, well, delegate to AI at this point, right? The job for us has kind of shifted towards more planning and QA rather than actual programming. So it's fun. It's fun
Right.
to see progress from week to week. Vitaly, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Phil. Appreciate you having